Fight for the running Rebs. At Indiana, Bobby Knight is putting his best foot forward, while Navy center David Robinson is anchoring the fleet. Fasten your seatbelts. We're heading out on the road to the Final Four.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. I'm Jim Nantz along with James Brown. We'll be here in our New York studio throughout the day and throughout the tournament to help guide and escort you on the long and winding road to the Final Four. We are one day away from Selection Sunday, when 64 teams will be chosen to take part in this year's NCAA Championship Tournament. And even as we speak, the Tournament Selection Committee is deliberating behind closed doors in Kansas City. And we'll check in on their progress momentarily. Now, in a half an hour, we'll send you downtown about a mile away to Madison Square Garden, where you'll see Syracuse and Pittsburgh in the first of the Big East Conference semifinals. We'll come back and continue our look at how this year's tournament field might shape up. And then most of you will see Purdue bid for the outright title in the Big Ten when the Boilermakers meet Michigan. Elsewhere, we'll show you the other Big East semifinals, surprising Providence against top-seeded Georgetown. James, upsets are quickly becoming the story of all of these postseason conference tournaments right now.
And I'll tell you, Jimmy, with the upsets that took place last night in college basketball, I think that's indicative of what will take place during the NCAA tournament. There are no clear-cut favorites, and any team absolutely has a real threat and a chance to win the NCAA championship. But let me bring you up to date on some of the upsets that took place in college basketball last night. Out on the WAC, the Western Athletic Conference, in the semifinal, it was an upset. Wyoming getting by UTEP 77-74. Wyoming will now meet New Mexico in tonight's finals. Another upset in the West Coast Athletic Conference, it was Pepperdine getting by San Diego 64-63. An outstanding game there. Oregon, another upset in the Pac-10, beating Arizona 72-63. And in the Pac-10 quarterfinals out there, UCLA, the regular season Pac-10 conference champion, won that game 99-83. That was a 19th victory out of the last 21 games for UCLA. Problems were the order of the night for St. John's. They were spanked handily by Providence in the Big East quarterfinal, 80-51. And I'll tell you, emotions were running high before this game. A sellout crowd at Madison Square Garden. Delray Brooks got Providence going early when he nailed this three-pointer from downtown range. And, of course, St. John's coach Lou Carnesecca knew that he was in for a real tough battle. Shelton Jones was intending to throw an alley-oop pass, but the ball actually goes into the basket, one of the few things that happened well for them. But Billy Donovan set a tournament record with 34 points for Providence, and you can tell by the look on the faces of the St. John's players, they know that no team going into the NCAA tournament can rest on their laurels.
The Providence team is a surprise. Now, there were more upsets, and that was really the name of the game in the ACC tournament, where North Carolina State defeated Duke last night in overtime. Jimmy Valvano's team getting ready for the tournament again. Actually, they have to really win the ACC postseason tournament to get there, because there are 14 losses on the year. There you saw Shackelford with the slam dunk, 2 of his 16, but Kevin Strickland scored 14 consecutive for Coach K, and Duke tied it up. Went to overtime. Vinny Del Negro for the Wolfpack scored 9 points in the OT, and North Carolina State beat Duke to advance on. Now the Wolfpack will play today against Wake Forest. Another surprise winner over Clemson, 69-62. Clemson now winless in the ACC tournament since 1980. In the SEC quarterfinals, LSU upset Florida. Again, another upset. Florida, the number 2 team in that conference during the regular season. The Gators were the number 2 seed at this tournament, but yesterday's action against the Tigers, this is from the outside. Anthony Wilson with a 3-point shot. Dale Brown's team really led it throughout. Vernon Maxwell tried to ignite the Gators down the stretch. Here, Maxwell gets the jam, but Florida just couldn't do it. Down the stretch, Nikita Wilson jams to close the door on the Gators, and LSU goes on to win it 72-66. And next up for LSU will be Georgia later today. Also in the SEC, Tennessee was toppled by Alabama 68-60. Alabama, the regular season winner, and they're looking good right now. In the PCAA, UNLV coasting once again. They won it last night by 34 to improve the record to 32-1. The Running Rebs now will meet in the final of their conference tournament. San Jose State, a 1-point winner last night against Cal Santa Barbara. However, the Spartans are 0-12 lifetime against UNLV, so tough chance for them tonight, really.
Teams are warming up for the big one, indeed. Now, as we mentioned, the selection committee is meeting in Kansas City to compile its list of who's in and where they'll be playing. Our Tim Brent is covering this story, so let's go out to him live. Tim?
James, all the eyes in college basketball are starting to focus in on Kansas City. Tomorrow afternoon, the 9-man selection committee will hand us the names of the 64 teams, and we will announce in this room which teams are in the tournament and which teams are not. And hi, everybody, I'm Tim Brent, and half the excitement in a situation like this is the build-up, and there is an awful lot of speculation. But just like in any other entertainment business, first comes the performance, then the accolades, and finally, the rewards, and it is suspenseful.
And our new Miss America is Susan Aiken, Miss Mississippi. And the winner is Back to the Future.
In college basketball, the moment of truth is also drawing near. Which teams will be selected to participate in the hysteria commonly known as March Madness? There are 290 schools playing Division I basketball, but only 64 make the tournament. 29 receive automatic bids by virtue of winning their conference championships. The remaining 35 teams are chosen at large, but the process is not that simple. The tournament field is selected by the NCAA Selection Committee, a group of 9 athletic directors from across the country. The committee is chaired by Dick Schultz from the University of Virginia. The selection process is a long and difficult task. The committee gathers information throughout the season on all potential tournament teams. Then a 3-day selection process takes place throughout the weekend here in Kansas City. The selection formula is a 3-step process. First and foremost, the committee selects the 64 teams. Of the 29 automatic berths, 8 teams have already clinched conference titles, with remaining championships to be decided in games throughout the weekend. In picking the 35 at-large berths, the first 25 are relatively easy. For instance, a team like Iowa, which did not win its conference championship, but has 26 victories against a tough schedule. It is sure to be in. But then comes the toughest part for the selection committee.
The real tough part comes in usually the last 5 or 6 spots, because at that point in time we're probably still looking at least 15 teams for those last 5 spots.
What are the determining factors for the teams on the fence? Well, a winning record is a must, but more importantly is the strength of schedule. Are both the wins and losses against quality opponents? Also the intangible, who's hot and who's not?
We really take a hard look at strength of schedule. And we even get down to the point where we have such things as quality wins and quality losses. For example, going on the road, playing a top 10 team, losing by 1 point or losing in overtime may help a team more than playing a very poor team at home and winning the game by 20 points.
Now, once the 64 teams are selected, the committee ranks the teams in terms of strength 1 to 64. The teams are then regionalized competitively using the S-curve. Each of the first 4 ranked teams becomes a top seed in the 4 regions, 1, 2, 3, 4, with the strongest team on the left. The next 4 ranked teams become the number 2 seeds in each region, 5, 6, 7, 8, the strongest team on the right. The process continues back and forth across the regions until all 64 clubs have been placed. The S-curve is used to maintain competitive balance among the 4 regions as well as within the regions. But the committee adds one more factor which complicates the balanced S-curve, regionalization. Where possible, the committee tries to keep teams in the natural areas of interest. But of course, some teams must be moved to keep competitive balance along the S-curve, as well as to avoid early rematches of conference rivals.
This year we're going back to an old formula that we used before '64, in that we're not going to replay conference games until the finals of the regional tournament. So this means if we have a conference that gets 4 or 5 or maybe even 6 teams in, some of those teams are going to have to travel a little bit further than they have in the past, but we think it will be better for the tournament.
So you can see that the process is in-depth, sophisticated, complicated, and sometimes controversial. But the selection committee does go to great lengths to get the best 64 teams available into the tournament. And then they try to match them up as evenly as possible. So when the names go to these boards tomorrow afternoon, this is where it begins, the road to the Final Four. And James and Jim, I don't think my alma mater, Maryland's going to make it. How about you guys? Houston, Harvard, they have a shot?
Well, Tim, actually, Houston still has an outside shot. They'd have to win the Southwest Conference tournament.
I'm going to have to help Harvard recruit from Washington, D.C.
Next year for Harvard. All right, James, and we'll come back and take a look at which teams from the Midwest will get a taste of March Madness, and you'll meet the son of a coaching legend who's looking to create a legacy of his own. All of that and more when the road to the Final Four continues here on CBS.
CBS Sports presents The Road to the Final Four, sponsored by the U.S. Armed Forces. It's a great place to start. Old Milwaukee and Old Milwaukee Light. It doesn't get any better than this. And by Briggs & Stratton, the power in power equipment.
The NCAA tournament has been a showcase for some of the greatest coaches in college basketball. Coaches whose innovative minds have helped revolutionize the sport. Coaches with players and teams that have dominated their peers. These are some of the Hall of Famers. Right through John Wooden, the Wizard of Westwood. and Ray Meyer, who retired 2 years ago after winning 724 games. Now DePaul is coached by Ray Meyer's son, Joey, who is emerging as an outstanding leader in his own right. And as Jim Nantz reports, it's not that unusual for sons to carry on in their father's path.
Primary day in Massachusetts put a new generation Kennedy name on the November ballot. Joe Kennedy was out today thanking the voters. He is the son of assassinated U.S. Senator Robert Kennedy.
In entertainment, as in politics, it's not unusual for a son to follow in his famous father's footsteps. The same holds true in sports. In Chicago, young Joey Meyer watched his father's legendary era end in disappointment.
So Ray Meyer at DePaul was deprived one last time at his shot for a national championship. Here in this tough Chicago neighborhood, when Joey took over, to say he received a chilly welcome to his new position would be putting it very mildly.
It was very difficult, and I'd be lying if I didn't tell you how difficult it was for me personally and for my family.
Joey Meyer learned the sport at his father's knee and then played for his dad at DePaul. After graduation, Joey stayed on as an assistant, becoming heir to the throne.
Tony in for him, huh? Tony in for him? Oh, Ramon.
He probably got more from his mother. We used to talk basketball at our table, and it was always basketball because my wife was a former basketball player. And if you came to our house, that's all we ever discussed, winning and losing and how the game should be played.
In 1984, Joey assumed control. After a disappointing first-round loss in '85, the Blue Demons fared better last year. First downing Virginia and then Oklahoma. In their third-round game, they ran into red-hot Duke University, a team that would go on to the championship game. Still, it was progress for the Blue Demons.
I think the tournament gave this team and myself personally a lot of confidence. Just getting in and then going ahead and playing well and winning 2 games against 2 quality programs and quality teams. I think that personally gave me a lot, and I know it helped our team going into this year.
And this year, DePaul has played like, well, demons. Led by senior Dallas Comegys, Joey Meyer's crew racked up over 20 wins and a top 10 ranking. Meyer's hours of hard work, his intensity, and his coaching philosophy were paying off. His players had become believers.
It was just a great feeling for me to play for, Coach Ray, by him being in the Hall of Fame. It just made things a lot easier. And now that Joey takes over, I think he's a lot more confidence, and I just love playing in the system.
The system may be Joey's, but winning is a family trait.
It was difficult. He's 6 feet, a legend, who has an office 10 feet away from you, who writes a column, who does your games on the radio, who just happens to be your father and has won 724 games. There's some pressure on you.
I'm so proud of Joey, and I think the chancellor of the university came in the other day, and he told me how proud he was of Joey. I mean, this whole university, and I think the city of Chicago, have adopted Joey.
So it's a vindication for Joey Meyer. And keep in mind, this is really his first team at DePaul now in his 3rd season, where it's his players. And it's not unusual to say either that Joey Meyer could very well be this year's Coach of the Year. What about teams from the Midwest? We know the Blue Demons will be in the tournament. Who else looks good, James?
Well, as we take a look at the Midwest, Jimmy, 2 teams have already qualified as a result of winning their conferences. Xavier of Ohio won the MCC. They're definitely in, as well as Wichita State. They won the MVC with a record of 23-10. Probables, take a look there. 6 teams from the Big Ten, again reflecting the strength of schedule, and outstanding teams there. 4 teams from the Big 8, and hoping for at-large bids, Tulsa, DePaul, and the upset Kings Notre Dame. On the fence, St. Louis, Cleveland State, and Southwest Missouri State are teams that are on the fence. And again, Cleveland State and Southwest Missouri State, they'll be meeting in action tonight. One of those teams, if they win, perhaps will get the at-large bid.
Cleveland State, Southwest Missouri State in the Mid-Continent Conference Final. Now, Cleveland State really made an impact on last year's tournament. You'll recall they upset Indiana, but Southwest Missouri State won the regular season by 3 games. And in the power ratings, they are in the top 50 in the country, and they have a 24-5 mark. So could be in there, but I really think it gets down to the winner of that game tonight between Cleveland State, Southwest Missouri State will get an at-large bid. Now, coming up after our preview show, the road to the Final Four, we have Game 1 of the Big East semifinals, Syracuse and Pittsburgh. Let's go to Madison Square Garden and Brent Musburger.
York City, the world's pressure cooker. And today in Madison Square Garden, we move another step closer to the Big East